Hi there, Donna in Grand Rapids, continuing with part 5 of our Pysanky tutorial. And we are now moving on to doing the orange part of the egg. I've had my egg resting in orange dye for maybe a minute. It really doesn't take very long for these dyes to work. They're very strong and they're designed to work quickly. Once they get a little older, after you've used them for a while, and they do last a long time. I have 10-year-old dyes, so there's no reason you can't hold on to your dyes from season to season. And if they need a little refreshing, you can always refresh them with extra vinegar or reboiling and adding vinegar. So don't throw your dyes away just because the season has changed. Okay, now, like I showed you in the previous video, very carefully, I'm going to bring that orange egg out of there, put this off to the side. Blot this. Now you might have noticed that I'm still using the same tissue, which is a Viva paper towel actually, as I used on the yellow. So now you will have a multicolored rainbow paper towel when you're done. It's always good to conserve. But if it gets too messy, you can certainly pick up a new paper towel. That's not a big deal. Okay, now we're going to move on and cover everything in the final design that needs to remain orange. So if we look at our picture here, we can see that what's supposed to be orange in the final design are drawing these little, what are called pine needles on the vertical, horizontal, and diagonal lines of the egg. Okay. Once again, we do not need to pencil this. This is certainly easy enough to do without penciling. Get a little wax in the kistka. There. Okay, so doesn't have to be exact. It's just drawing lines. So 1, 2. It doesn't have to be the same. You should try and make them sort of the same length and the same distance apart, but the same number of these on each one doesn't have to be the same as long as it looks good. Okay, there's one done. And you take these to the equator, which we did not draw this line. I'm just going to put it in there real quick. So, oops, see, okay. Okay, I'm going to use this opportunity. This is not a big deal, but see how that made a glop right there? You wouldn't really want that in your final design. So we're going to have a little cleanup lesson right here. The first thing you do is take, in my case, what I use is a good old-fashioned wooden toothpick. And you scrape your unwanted wax off in one direction. The last thing you want to do is spread that around. Now you might wonder, well, why is it such a big deal to get rid of that unwanted wax? Remember, anything covered by wax is going to stay that color in your final design. Well, you don't want that orange in your final design. You want that to be black in your final design right there. And if this has wax on it from that mistake that just happened, then it's not going to look right. So I'm scraping in one direction and I'm cleaning off my toothpick in between scrapes because, like I said, you don't want to spread your wax around. You want to get rid of your wax. So I've scraped that off as much as I can with the toothpick, but we're not done yet. So now I take some Goo Gone, and I'm not trying to hide the label. I just, it got messy. So anyway, this is Goo Gone is what it is. And I put a little bit in the cap of the Goo Gone cap. Because this is in a wide open area, I'm just going to use a regular, you could just use a regular Q-tip to clean that off. So I would take a Q-tip and just wipe that. But because a lot of the time your mistake might be in the middle of a design that, you're trying to reserve or conserve the wax that's around it and not get rid of it and not spread it, you need to try and be really, really, really careful for your cleanup. So I take a toothpick and I just take a tiny bit of cotton and I put it around the tip dip it, just get a little bit of the Goo Gone on there. Make sure you don't have Goo Gone on your fingers, because if you do, anywhere that you touch with your fingers is going to get rid of your wax, and you don't want that. So this is a tricky little thing. You don't want to make mistakes. They're fixable, but it's a pain and there are pitfalls. So I just made one swipe in one direction. You don't want to go like this. You want to just keep the wax as contained as possible. And I rotated my Q-tip or my toothpick, and I'm doing it again. And then that's all. This is contaminated now. This has too much wax on it. So now I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to go the other direction. I'm not going back and forth, but whichever direction you decide to go, just continue to go that direction. And it's looking pretty good, but I think we need to do it one more time. I'm going to try one of these micro sticks to do it. I just got these yesterday. They just arrived from Amazon, and they do have tiny little tips on them. And in this case, it'll work fine for this particular correction. You can see how that wax we wanted to get rid of is almost gone. However, it does still have a lot of Goo Gone on the egg, and you don't want that to stay there. So take a paper towel and blot it. And if you have some water handy, which is a good thing to keep nearby, but you don't want to put much in the way of water because it'll get rid of your dye. So just dab it. I feel pretty confident that that's fixed. The good news is that if we find out when we dye it in the next color that it's not taking dye there, we know it's not fixed yet, so we can try fixing it again. And in the end, still all is not lost, because this is going to be a black egg. You could just cover, if there was a spot there, you could take a black marker and just color that in if your color didn't take in that spot because of the mistake. So anyway, I was going to go ahead and just make this little line there just so you would see we're just going up to that side line that we didn't bother waxing in the first place, but I just wanted to do it now to show you how far we're going with our pine needles. So continuing to do these now along the diagonal. Now we'll do it along the equator. And the next diagonal. You can see these are not all the same. You can be as meticulous as you want. There are a lot of Pysanky artists whose work is much more perfect than mine, and everything they do on their eggs are perfect, and that's admirable. And in some designs it matters, but it certainly doesn't in this one. And I'm working especially fast to keep your attention, I hope. Okay. Little tip. When you lay your tool down, do not do like this and lay it into the wax. Make sure it's off to the side like this. The reason for that is that if you lay it in the wax, it's going to harden. Now your tool is stuck, and you're going to have to pick it up, and then your tip might come loose and not be tight anymore, and it'll rotate when you're trying to keep it steady. You don't want that. All right, so we've just completed this step right here, and this looks like this. All right, so now we are going to put this into red dye, and that will be what you see when you come back for the next segment.